In the glittering age of golden Hollywood, studios churned out sequels for one reason: money. Creative ambition often took a back seat to survival. And yet, against all logic, some of those cash grab projects, films no one asked for, ended up defining genres, saving careers, and rewriting cinematic history. These weren't supposed to work, but they did. So let's pull back the velvet curtain and uncover 10 old Hollywood sequels nobody wanted. But that became masterpieces. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. 1. Bride of Frankenstein 1935. When Universal Pictures demanded a follow-up to Frankenstein 1931, director James Whale wanted no part of it. The original had terrified audiences and turned Boris Karloff into a global icon, but Whale feared any sequel would cheapen his creation. The studio, bleeding cash during the Depression, ignored his protests. Then something extraordinary happened. Whale agreed, on the condition that he could make it his way. He injected twisted humor, gothic decadence, and homoerotic undertones unseen in Hollywood horror. Elsa Lanchester's brief but unforgettable performance as the bride, with her electrified hair and hiss of rejection, turned a monster movie into tragic art. Audiences expected a rehash. They got a masterpiece, one that scholars still call the Citizen Kane of horror sequels. It proved a follow-up could deepen, not dilute its source. 2. The Thin Man Goes Home 1945. After 4 wildly popular Thin Man films, audiences assumed William Powell and Myrna Loy had said all there was to say as Nick and Nora Charles, the wisecracking sleuths whose martini glasses never ran dry. Even the stars were tired. The war years had dimmed Hollywood's sparkle, and MGM hesitated to bankroll another entry. But 1945's The Thin Man Goes Home defied expectations. Stripped of its usual New York glamour, the film sent the couple to Nick's small hometown, revealing the detective's roots and humanity. For the first time, audiences saw the charming drunkard as a son craving his father's approval. It was lighter, warmer, and surprisingly heartfelt, a wartime balm. Critics who expected exhaustion instead praised it as a rejuvenation. Sometimes, coming home really does save the story. 3. Son of Frankenstein 1939. Universal had abandoned its monsters after a string of diminishing returns. But with Europe edging toward war, the studio needed a surefire hit. They gambled on resurrecting Frankenstein one more time. Boris Karloff reluctantly donned the makeup for the last time, joined by Basil Rathbone as the Baron's son and Bela Lugosi as the vengeful, broken-necked Gore. Director Roland V. Lee crafted an expressionist nightmare, angular sets, fog-soaked corridors, and psychological torment. What could have been a tired retread became a visual feast that inspired an entire generation of filmmakers from Tim Burton to Guillermo del Toro. The film's success not only revived Universal's monster franchise, but also led directly to the golden run of The Wolfman, The Mummy's Hand, and others. A sequel born of desperation revived horror itself. 4. Road to Morocco 1942. By their third outing, Bing Crosby and Bob Hope's road to comedy seemed like they'd run their course. The premise, two scheming drifters stumbling into exotic chaos, was starting to creak. But Road to Morocco turned fatigue into farce. Hope and Crosby broke every rule of narrative decorum. They mocked the script, winked at the audience, and turned meta before meta existed. Like Webster's dictionary, Hope quipped, "We're Morocco-bound." The self-aware humor, fast-fire improvisation, and infectious chemistry transformed what should have been a tired sequel into pure, wartime escapism. Audiences, weary from global conflict, roared with laughter. Critics later credited it as the film that perfected the buddy comedy formula, a blueprint Hollywood still follows today. 5. The Bells of St. Mary's 1945. When Going My Way 1944 became a runaway success, Paramount scrambled for a sequel. But how do you improve on a film that had already swept the Oscars? Director Leo McCarey took a risk. He stripped away the schmaltz. He brought back Bing Crosby's father O'Malley, paired him with Ingrid Bergman as Sister Benedict, and shifted focus from sentiment to quiet grace. The result was tender, restrained, and deeply human. Instead of retreading the original success, The Bells of St. Mary's explored faith through compassion, not sermons. It became a box office phenomenon and an enduring Christmas classic, proof that sincerity could outshine spectacle. 6. Tarzan and His Mate, 1934. The first MGM Tarzan film was a hit, but studio executives wanted something safer for the sequel. Less animalistic, more civilized. Director Cedric Gibbons and star Johnny Weissmuller ignored them. They doubled down on sensuality, casting Maureen O'Sullivan in daring costumes and staging underwater sequences that remain astonishing even today. Controversy erupted. The Production Code Office nearly banned the film for indecency. Yet audiences loved it. The raw chemistry between Weissmuller and O'Sullivan redefined cinematic romance. It was primal, equal, and breathtakingly physical. Critics now hail Tarzan and His Mate as one of the few Hollywood sequels that surpassed its original, capturing both adventure and intimacy with a wild, untamed beauty that no later version matched. 7. The Maltese Falcon, 1941. Few realize that John Huston's The Maltese Falcon, the film that launched film noir, was technically the third adaptation of Dashiell Hammett's novel. Warner Brothers had already tried twice, once in 1931 and again as a light comedy in 1936. Both flopped. Executives saw no reason to try again. Enter Huston, a rookie screenwriter turned director, who convinced the studio to let him film the book word for word. Casting Humphrey Bogart as Sam Spade turned pulp into poetry. With its chiaroscuro lighting, cynical dialogue, and moral ambiguity, The Maltese Falcon defined a generation of hard-boiled detectives. A forgotten property became the template for noir itself, a reminder that sometimes the third tries the charm. 8. Another Thin Man, 1939. Yes, Another Thin Man entry makes the list, and for good reason. By the late 1930s, MGM's writers were scraping barrels for plots. Yet Another Thin Man avoided repetition by diving into darker territory: blackmail, murder, and class tension. Director W.S. Van Dyke and writers Francis Goodrich and Albert Hackett infused the mystery with a melancholy awareness that time was catching up to Nick and Nora. The wisecracks remained, but beneath them lay fatigue and affection. The result? A sophisticated blend of comedy and noir that critics hailed as the series' artistic high point. In a franchise built on laughter, the third film whispered truth, even glamour ages. 9. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, 1966. By the mid-1960s, the spaghetti western boom was sputtering out. Director Sergio Leone's previous two films, A Fistful of Dollars and For a Few Dollars More, had stunned audiences, but producers wanted another, bigger, bloodier entry. Leone resisted, fearing repetition. What he delivered instead was operatic myth. With Clint Eastwood, Eli Wallach, and Lee Van Cleef and Ennio Morricone's haunting score, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly transcended genre. Its three-way duel and silent grandeur elevated the Western into art. Leone's reluctant sequel became a cultural landmark, the film that closed one era of cinema and opened another. Proof that when vision triumphs over commerce, the result can be immortal. 10. After the Thin Man, 1936. Sometimes lightning strikes twice in the same bottle of gin. Hot off their first Thin Man success, Powell and Loy feared the sequel would collapse under expectations. MGM's solution? Hire Dashiell Hammett himself to craft the story. Set during New Year's Eve amid jazz and high society, After the Thin Man blended sophistication with genuine tragedy, introducing a young James Stewart in a rare villainous role. The pacing crackled, the banter sizzled, and critics declared it sharper than the original. Audiences proved them right. The film doubled the box office of its predecessor and established Nick and Nora as Hollywood's most beloved couple, a testament to chemistry that even cynics couldn't bottle. The curtain call. What ties these unlikely triumphs together? Desperation. Each was born from fatigue, financial crisis, or fading stardom. Studios ordered them to fill ledgers, not hearts. Yet, artistry found a way. Directors seized second chances to refine ideas, explore characters, or simply rebel against mediocrity. In Bride of Frankenstein, Whale turned horror into dark comedy. In The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Leone turned Western gunfights into operatic choreography. Even the Thin Man sequels, conceived as disposable entertainment, captured the evolution of American optimism from the Roaring '30s to wartime introspection. These films remind us that creativity often blooms in captivity. When studios impose limits, great directors find freedom within them. What begins as a mandate becomes a masterpiece. So, the next time you roll your eyes at another sequel, remember, Hollywood history is littered with unwanted follow-ups that change the game. Sometimes, the movies nobody wanted become the ones we can't live without.